So you do. Hey, Chief Bryant, how you doing?
I'm excellent. How's it going?
First of all, I'm glad that you're no longer interim.
So, I appreciate it. I appreciate that.
We started the show about some of the incidents that are happening in the city. That you're being very vigilant about informing the public. But we did a story, and I'll tell you how it all came about all the guns that have been stolen from cars from people, being negligent. That they try to protect their personal safety, but they're leaving guns in the cars. And these people, these criminals, these unsavory types, they know this, and they're breaking into cars to get these weapons and then going out to commit crimes. What can you tell us about that? And what do you want to say before we get into some other stuff about to the citizens of Atlanta?
Yeah, Ron, I'm glad that you're bringing this to the attention of your audience. I think that is important that they recognize that if you can't securely secure your weapon, that you leave it to the discretion or leave it up to these individuals, as you call them, unsavory individuals who are breaking in these cars, and then they tend to turn around and use them for other criminal elements and enterprises. And it causes us more problems. I'm not one to tell anyone that they can't have a gun. I believe you should, you have the right to do so in this country. But if doing so, you have to be responsible. And that's what's causing us a lot of problems, is the irresponsibility of people leaving these guns unsecured.
Are you surprised by the number of thefts that we've seen?
Yes and no. You hate to say that historically, we see these numbers, especially during the summer times. Nationally, we see the same type of increases as it relates to guns being stolen from vehicles. After the pandemic, and now that more cars are out on the street, we're just seeing them even more. And so, yeah, it's concerning that we're seeing the level and the numbers that we are seeing.
As we go through these weekends, I find myself, logging on to all of the news sites and waking up to see what has happened in the city. As you go about your day to day, trying to, keep crime numbers down, a lot of times people are talking about the stats. Well, compared to this and compared to that, what do you say to people who are at this point? It's becoming fodder for not only politics, but also for sites like Nextdoor, where anything and everything is all about the crime. What do you say to citizens who are like, they don't know what to believe?
Well, one, I'm just like I'm on this call. I'll be glad to have a conversation with anyone. I'll be glad to explain to them the numbers. You're absolutely right. Numbers can mean a number of different things to a number of different people. Just depends on how you play those numbers out. What I will tell people is that when you're looking at crime as a whole, or if you're looking specifically at violent crime, I want people to understand that we should be addressing it more of an epidemic as opposed to just a crime problem. Because what happens is, Ron, I've told people a number of times, the Atlanta Police Department has been consistent, not just over the COVID period, but we've consistently over the years been doing the exact same thing, going out in the communities, arresting individuals who commit crimes. Historically, we're in many of the same communities that we were in 10, 15, 20 years ago, letting us know that if you're only using the law enforcement, the police department, to address these crimes, then there's other entities that need to really step up and have an input in it, because we're not going to change it if all we're using is police. When you hear people saying the police is not doing something, then what they're saying is they want people to fear the police department. And we're no longer in that fear game. No community is asking us to come in and for people to be afraid of police. And so we are now having to adjust on how we're doing things. We need to be able to solve these problems differently. We're still here to put people in jail who violate crimes. We'll continue to do that. What we do know is that's not just the answer to reducing crime.
On the line with us right now, we're talking to Atlanta Police Department Chief Rodney Bryant, talking about crime here in the city, as well as some, I want to pivot here. I'm going to go back to what we've been talking about. But, this thing about Buckhead trying to separate themselves from the rest of the city is starting to get some traction. They believe that, if this happens, that crime will go down. I mean, criminals are going to go where things are affluent. We've seen what happened at the malls and some of the other shootings. I mean, it's happening. Do you think if Buckhead leaves the city of Atlanta, they can solve the crime problem?
Absolutely not, Ryan. I don't get into the politics of it, but what I can tell you is that when we're looking at crime, people don't look at it because of the city. People look at it for the resources that they have. Crimes are crimes of opportunity and resources, and unless you are doing something with the businesses in Buckhead and walling them off, people are still going to go to Buckhead. Uh, the same places you like to go, criminals like to go as well.
Social,
People,
Chief Bryant, has become a gift and a curse when it comes
I'm
to.
sorry, say it again.
I said social media has become a gift and a curse when it comes to crime. We've got all these different sites that are on Instagram, and basically, it's here's what broke it, here's the wreck, here's the crime, here's the shooting. Do you think it's helping or hurting your job?
It does both. Believe it or not, it does both. We get a lot of information from social media. We're able to put a lot of information out through social media. The problem that we run into is when bad information or misinformation or just downright wrong information is put out to the public through social media, and that becomes very problematic. A lot of people like to be the first to tell a story, and they give out misinformation or wrong information, and it makes that much harder. In a number of cases, we've had to go back and address concerns for a community that the information was just wrong.
We're gonna, of course, as we watch what happens with this case this weekend, that you guys, and kudos for getting a suspect into custody, but also what happened in Piedmont Park. There's been some misinformation. They were saying that this was a serial killer and all that stuff, and you had to go on and kind of, diffuse that. When it has those type of things happening, does it make your job more difficult when people are saying stuff like, along with everything else that's going on now, on a possibility of a serial killer in Atlanta, or these crimes are connected, when a lot of times they aren't, and it's just somebody out there trying, like you said, being first and then just sending it out there. I think I received that post like so many other people, that was shared over and over and over again without a credible source.
Absolutely. And so, what that does when people are putting misinformation out, it takes time for our investigators and our police officers to actually have to address that as well. One of my biggest jobs is to address the perception of crime and the feelings people have about crime. And so when we had communities saying, "Hey, we believe we have a serial killer," I had to take police officers, go out in those communities and address those concerns, let them know that we have no information in relations to a serial killer being in Atlanta or anywhere in the metropolitan area for that matter. But it takes resources to do that. It takes time for our public information officer to get out and continue to push that information out when we could really be gathering positive information that allows us to really resolve these cases much quicker.
How do you think things are going to shape up as we get more into, with people are, and I've read some stories about how this is all about, nobody's having conflict resolution, Chief. I mean, these incidents are escalating to violence and shootings and deaths because people have been just cooped up. They're mentally stressed, and they're not turning the other cheek. They're actually committing crimes and murders. How do you alleviate that problem?
Yeah, Ron, that's a good question. One of the things that we're relying on in the police department is reaching out to our partners, a number of our civic and nonprofit organization that really can help intervene in respect to that. I'm meeting with a number of organizations saying, what can we do? And some of it is just going in and educating the community. Some of it is giving certain communities mental health assistance so that they can actually address these type flare-ups a little bit differently. I think that when people hear me use the term COVID crime, is not that the COVID the COVID, the disease itself, is causing problems. It's actually the result of after the aftermath of, as you stated, people being cooped up, the stresses that they have on not having the ability to do the things that they have done normally. And so we just have to get into a space where we can now interject in that, give people different outlets. Kids aren't going to school. People can't go to church. There are limitations on going to the movies and everything that you do. And I think once we get to some level of normalcy, that we'll start to see those numbers trend down.
When we're seeing a disconnect from different levels of government, and I know you may not be in a position to answer this question, but outside of the city, people believe that Atlanta has never shut down, that Atlanta has been wide open from the beginning. And I think that kind of adds to the problem, where people believe that either we didn't believe that COVID was real, or we didn't care. Like, when you hear people outside of the city, I'm sure when the police chiefs and y'all get on these calls and y'all talk about what's going on around the country, because I know you do, what do you talk about when you hear about what people's perception of Atlanta is?
Yeah, well, in all actuality, Ryan, we did have an influx of outside people coming into our city during the last summer. We knew that there were people coming from other major cities that were shut completely down. Hence, they were Philadelphia Day and Detroit Day and New York Day here in Atlanta. Not only was this the information that the police was gathering, but this is the information that we were getting from nightclub and restaurant owners, that they recognized that their clientele was a little bit different as well. And they had to adjust accordingly to outside people coming in. And so we did see that. What we have begun to see is those numbers slow down because other cities have opened up, very much like the city of Atlanta.
Are we still, Chief Bryant, doing a no chase policy in the metro?
So I want us to be clear on that. The city of Atlanta at one time suspended its chase policy. It wasn't a no chase policy, it suspended it. When I came in, I reevaluated our policy. I worked with PERF, Police Executive Research Forum, to get best practices as it relates to it. And what they gave me, I put in more stringent responsibilities and accountabilities to that policy. One of the things that I recognized is we could not be in a space where a violent crime could occur and our officers had no tool to apprehend a person immediately. What we no longer do is, just because we believe or think a person committed a crime, that they can get into that chase. You have to have firsthand knowledge, immediate firsthand knowledge, because there are times that we have to immediately apprehend someone, and we can't be in a space of allowing that individual to get away. And it differs from one area to the next. There are cities around us that have absolutely no chase policy. There are some that have more lenient chase policy. But I think that ours is the right policy for our city.
Chief Bryant is on the phone with us right now. Well, on StreamYard on Ryan Kevin Uncensored. One thing that is a point of contention, Chief, that comes down to one side or the other, is how the water boys, or that concept, because I'm not going to say they're all a group, but how people are going to treat them. We've seen incidents on some of these sites of violence, of people having their car stolen. I saw something the other day where somebody had left the car and they tried to take the individual's car. How do you address this? Is it a total shutdown for, some are saying, well, they need to be taught how to be entrepreneurs, and there's some other things that the mayor may have talked about. Like, at this point, where we're seeing some incidents where these individuals aren't the best individuals and are taking advantage of people who are driving up to these intersections.
Yeah, Ryan, I'll tell you, you're absolutely right. Our city is completely split on that subject. I believe that the mayor really looked to resolve it in the best interest of everyone, including the young people that were out in the streets. But I can assure you that this is a topic that she's paid a lot of attention to, and I've had to brief her on a number of times on. One of the things that we think is most important is that people stop giving these young men money. It puts the person giving the money, it puts the kids, it puts everyone in harm's way. I believe that yes, we can address them and allow them the ability to learn a form of entrepreneurship, but it's just not on these corners by selling water because it just it's too much for them to handle. It causes too many problems for just general citizens riding up and down the street, and it's problematic for the police department as well.
Chief Rodney Bryant, I know that we started this discussion and the PR people were listening to the show, and I didn't think it was going to come together like this, but if that's what we need to do to get the top of the food chain on here, then so be it. And I look forward to us having more time in the future. As I've always said, the mayor can vouch for me. You know, this is a radio station that has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of listeners, and if you want to get the message out, it's not going to happen on the soundbite on the evening news. It'll happen right here on Ryan Cameron Uncensored. So it's an open door policy. We just want the cities to be safe and go back to where we can go do anything we want to do without any type of fear. And I appreciate the time.
Listen, Ron, I appreciate you and your team absolutely. As my director of public information was listening to it and asked could we make this happen. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I think it is important for social media has a responsibility to get information out. And I appreciate you doing that and listening to us.
Thank you very much. We look forward to talking to you again.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.